Let's talk about the high-skilled immigrants. This was a big one, right? And actually, I have not seen the clip of you saying it, so I'm fully relying on Rogan here. But you allegedly said, Rogan, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Rogan, jump right in, that you think that we should have as much immigration as possible, like no limit on immigration outside of,
high-skilled,
making sure that they're high-skilled. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
I'm also happy to have you quote exactly what I said here, because I want to make sure it's not misquoted, or I can just tell you right now what my position is, whichever you prefer.
Yep.
I can also just tell you what my position is. That might be easier.
I have the quote.
Yep.
I have the quote. So it's in a Breitbart article. It was somewhat recent. But it said, I actually fully agree with that. And one of the things where I think the Republican Party needs to define where we actually stand, there is an anti-legal immigration current among voters. I'm going to be on the debate stage in a month, and if anybody has any qualms with this, I think I'm going to have a real problem with that, because merit-based immigration is one of the fixes to economic growth in this country, effectively saying that we need more high-skilled immigrants to come in, take American jobs,
saying, just say what I said,
to create more profits for capitalism.
The latter part of that's not what I said, though, Rogan. Rogan, I just want to be really fair. I think you mixed a quote with a lot of editorializing you added in the end. So I'm not reading the article, but just be fair and say what I actually said, because up to when you started going off on your own, that's consistent with views that I have, and then you started saying things that are entirely inconsistent with views that I have.
So, Rogan, do you want to just read the quotation of what they said, but they said?
It's a little unfair, because I can tell you what my views are.
Mixing up the quote with my personal editorial. There is an anti-legal immigration current, and then it says in brackets, mood among voters, ... I'm going to be on the debate stage in a month, and if anybody has any qualms with this, I think I'm going to have a real problem with that, because merit-based immigration is one of the fixes to economic growth in this country, end quote.
Sure. So let me explain my position on immigration policy, if I may. Okay.
Yes.
The North Star, and I think I'll start with where we definitely agree, and then I'll go to where we may disagree, and we may not, actually, but let's find out. I believe the purpose of immigration policy, to state the obvious, right? Everybody should agree with this. It is so obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. The purpose of our legal immigration policy should be to advance the interests of citizens in this country, to advance the interests of the homeland. That should be the purpose of any country's immigration policy, ours included. Because we vehemently probably agree on illegal immigration, I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I favor militarizing the southern border. I favor not just building the wall, but literally relocating the U.S. military there, stop funding for sanctuary cities, cut foreign aid to Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and so on until they've fixed their southern border. But I suspect we agree there, and so we don't need to dwell on the illegal immigration issue, though militarizing the southern border, I think I'm about as both legally and constitutionally
I support that,
line
for the record.
as it gets. Yes. And for the record also, I'm the first candidate who has offered a legal and constitutional basis to go that far, and I stand by it, and I've said I would do it by March 31st, 2025. That's really important. Now let's go to legal immigration, where we may, I'm not sure, but we may have some daylight between us. So what I've said is, and I've said this in countless settings, I favor merit-based immigration, but I have a very clear definition of what merit means. To borrow an expression I've used through this campaign, does that mean a bunch of tech bros in Silicon Valley? No, it does not. We have a massive, diverse set of skills needs in this country. And so it's not just a bunch more tech people going and sitting in Silicon Valley. I would gut the H-1B program, which is a disaster. A, it's a lottery. B, it's not meritocratic. C, it's like a form of indentured servitude that effectively is a lobbying protection to the companies who get to keep the immigrant who comes over, but they can't even work for a different company. That's a product of crony capitalism of lobbying. I would gut that program. But here's what I do think merit means. Merit means two things. Do you have an ability to make skills-based contributions to this country? And do you also have civic commitments to this country? What does that mean? I would take the citizenship test from the back end of being a citizen, move that to the front end before somebody even gets a visa to enter this country. You got to know something about that country. This is consistent with what I think of as a hardcore nationalist position of mine, that every high school student who graduates from high school should have to pass that same test. I think part of the problem of why we have deep ingratitude in this country, ingratitude from the Rashida Tlaibs and the Ilhan Omars who come here as immigrants, But frankly, it's an ingratitude that grates on me. If somebody who grew up on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, fifth generation, that hates this country equally as Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, or AOC for that matter, is the same problem. People don't know something about that country. That's why I favor making English the national language. I think the U.S. is a country founded on ideals, but you have to have a common language to express those ideals with one another. Now, I don't favor a hard, like there's this Tom Cotton bill, and I love Tom Cotton. I don't support the absolute number cap because I think that's sloppy. I think that we have to be much more precise about what we're actually solving for. I'm solving certainly for a revival of national identity. That's what this whole campaign is about. That's what my first and second term in office will be all about. But I think that we have to solve for that national identity grounded in who we are. Revive civic duty. Revive actual civic knowledge about this country. Stop viewing the U.S. as just an economic zone. We're not just that. We're a team of citizens. We're not just a nation of immigrants. As a kid of immigrants, I go out of my way to say this all the time. We're not just a nation of immigrants. We're a nation of settlers. Yes, I am one of those settlers in this country. And I understand that some people may say, oh, you've only been here for one generation where I've been here for 6. Well, I disagree with you because I am as deeply rooted in this country. You try to shake me, you'll have to run through me to try. I am as deeply rooted in this country, more so than many people with ingratitude who take it 7 generations in. So that may be where we have a debate, and let's smoke that out because I do think that current exists. And you're right, it bothers me. But I'm an American nationalist, and the fact that I'm first generation shouldn't stop me from feeling that way. But on policy, I suspect there's not a ton of daylight between us, but that at least explains to you what my position actually is.
Why no cap, Vivek? Why do you think no cap on legal immigration? I think it's a fair question.
Yep. So I think
that was my question as well.
So it's like the way I think about the debate about military spending. Is it more or less? No, it's the right kind. Same thing with respect to immigration. So here's a problem that I suspect you guys may agree with me on. It's something I've been vocal on for a long time. Way too much immigration is just chain-based migration. People bringing their parents or other people who aren't really making contributions, but may even contribute cost to this country. I am all in on ending that. But it is a hard fact today that we do have more jobs in this country than we do have people. Talk to any small business, talk to any large business. It's just a fact that that's an impediment to economic growth. And so if there are people, here's my view on it. And the problem with the 400,000 or the 200,000 or whatever number we pick is, I think there's a version of the world where we may want less than that. But if there's a version of the world where there's more than that too, who fit the criteria of making honest commitments to this country, not coming here to be an immigrant, coming here to be a settler, coming here to be a settler who knows more about this country and the Constitution and our language and our laws than many people who are 3rd or 4th generation born into this country. If those conditions are met, then I have no problem with those people coming to this country. And what we may find out is that it's fewer than the cap that actually meet that description. It may be more than the cap, but I just think it's a sloppy, low-resolution way of doing it versus asking ourselves, what do we care about? We have an erosion of our national identity. No doubt about it. Big part of that is an invasion. Literally now an armed invasion. Just look at the pictures from yesterday across our southern border. That's a problem. It's why I'm a hardliner. It's also why I'm a hardliner on bringing the civics test to the visa, gut the H-1B program, end chain migration, which is most of the legal immigration that's useless that we're seeing today is just family members coming over. No, I don't want any of that. I think we need to put an end to it. Asylum, forget about it. Humanitarianism is not the goal of immigration policy. That's why I go back to that first principle. We all agree on this, I think. The purpose of any nation's immigration policy, including ours, should be what advances the interests of the homeland. That's the question. Now, we can disagree about specific policies of which one actually advances American interests, but that's where I'm at, is that I think that there are some ways in which actually there are kinds of merit-based legal immigration that can advance the interests of the homeland. The way we're doing it today absolutely does not, and that's what I would change.
Okay, so people at home can take that or leave that. That's where you stand. Maybe some years it'll be more immigration, some years it'll be fewer immigrants that are coming into the country, but you don't think that a cap is the right solve to it. You said it's low resolution.
Yes, illegal zero. And I'm also on illegal immigration. I just want to be clear about this. I have been clear since day one. I'm dead set against amnesty. I will never break up families, but we will relocate families as entire units to the countries of origin because I do see that as a threat to our rule of law and a threat to our national identity as well. So everything, Candace, you just said applies to strictly even just true merit and civic-based legal immigration.
Okay.
Candace, could I have just
absolutely,
one
Rogan. Anytime you want to pop in. Yeah.
So, I think it is a fair criticism when people say you want unlimited merit-based immigration, you say no cap, that those are symbiotic positions or criticisms. And I think what you should know on behalf of the base, on behalf of American middle-class voters, you talk about what's best for America. Are you talking about the people that own companies and stock, or the middle class who is watching their border be invaded by millions of illegal aliens over the past couple of years, watching our great cities be flooded, people sleeping on the streets in New York City, in Boston, in Portland, in LA, in Seattle, in Chicago, and then to take the position that, well, actually, I don't want a cap, I actually want to increase immigration. I'm sure you could see how that, especially in conjunction with your previous statement to re-enter into the TPP, that this would actually just be an overall process to lower labor costs for stockholders in this country, ship American jobs out, and keep effectively, the massive invasion that has been in this country. I haven't really heard you talk about a mass deportation policy, which President Trump has. We have to get these millions of people who came in out.
So, Rogan, I'm glad we're having this discussion because it's good to smoke out. I think it's good for our party. I just think this is a really important topic. So I think it's double clicking on this is good. I have been probably the staunchest candidate in this race about opposing the invasion across somebody else's border, use of our resources to protect against an invasion of somebody else's border, when we have literally an invasion across our own southern border. I am for not one case of amnesty. Relocate anybody who is in this country illegally to their country of origin, period. As a family unit. Don't just take the parents, take the whole family unit. That addresses the criticism about separating families. Because there's no merit
in the reason that they're coming over into this country.
There's no merit. And that's driving crime, driving large waves of crime in this country. It drives an undermining of the rule of law in this country. I believe over the objections of posse comitatus, militarize the border. So I just think it's important we separate that issue, Rogan, from the question of how do we then have a legal immigration policy that advances the interests of the homeland, not stockholders of a small set of companies, but actually our base of citizens in this country. There, let's have a legitimate discussion. My view is chain-based migration, wrong. H-1B program, wrong. English as national language, correct. Civics exam before getting a visa, correct. But this is what I favor, which is, I think, much more precise in accomplishing our shared national identity goals than to even think that, look at where many others in the Republican Party are. Say, hey, we did some cap and then we're done with it. Oh, and then we're still kind of looking the other way and turning the other cheek on the southern border. No, it's just a different vision of how to address the interests of citizens in this country, which is what I stand on the side of.
When running a